We're here.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Joseph. I've been thinking about you this past week a bit. I've uh, been following up with our conversation last time, where I try to listen to my own inner guidance around some of the questions that I might have, and I noticed that I can become easily distracted more than in the past. It's almost like there's something in me, the resistance coming up saying, no, 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 I don't approve of this. No, 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 kind of like a weird, um, uh, resistance. And so rather than fighting it or anything, I'm like, all right, I see it. It's resistance, and breathe through it, appreciate it. Um, and sometimes I kind of like I release it and it goes, and then other times I've noticed I kind of stay irritated for like a couple of hours, you know. So I'm just wondering what guidance you have about that.
So you found a sensitive area. That's a good thing to recognize it because the sensitivity had always been there. You're just starting to recognize it. Now, other people would say, I don't want to be aware of that. I don't want to be sensitive to this thing that's bothering me. I'd rather it just not exist and then I won't have to worry about it. And we say that's never going to happen. It's never going to happen. It just doesn't work like that. So we want you to see this, of course, as an opportunity to shift something that has been kind of deep down there that you're recognizing. So it's a really good thing. Of course, the how becomes fun to talk about, but the how will always figure itself out when you make your priority just connecting back to that energy. And so it is a little bit of that back and forth that we always talk about here. It's the moving in the direction of the energy and then feeling momentum pull you in a different direction. And this and that and this and that. And so the momentum going on in a different direction, that chatter, that what's been called a monkey mind. People call it the ego is distracting me. Well, it's just old habits of thought. It's just old patterns. It's just old ways of being. And as we were speaking last time, those habits become physically ingrained. So even it's not possible, nor would we ever expect you to demand that of yourself to have an instant and total sort of quantum leap or total shift. So you have the awareness, which is the first stage. You're not buying into it so much, but you're recognizing that all of these things are coming up and distracting you as you continue to relax into that deeper state of being.
Hmm.
And that recognition, that release starts to come about from that acceptance. And acceptance is sort of the key word there. As you allow it to play itself out, that momentum will peter out and it will dissipate. So there's nothing for you to do in that sense, but to allow it to sort of play itself out. And it becomes tricky because you still, almost everyone does this as well, still want to apply your action tendencies to this inner world, to your inner state of being. And so you think, well, maybe if I look at it and think it through and dissect it and maybe even rationalize it or any of that, you think that you can sort of untangle that and then you'll be in the clear. You'll be in that back to that clarity. But what happens energetically is that you start to get involved with that train of thought. And then it just gets bigger, and then it gets bigger, and then you're finding yourself not only agreeing with the thought, you find yourself wrapped up in it, and then you really do actually need to go take care of that right now. So you get up out of your chair, and then you've sort of been fully distracted away from that. So the key is to just let those thoughts come up. They'll chatter, they'll chatter, they'll chatter. You'll release it. And in the releasing, you learn something about yourself. you shift your energy and you go deeper into that state of connection. But then deep down, even deeper, there will be other sort of clusters of thoughts and beliefs that become activated and reveal themselves to you. And it just becomes a practice. The more and more you go into this, that old thoughts, previous ways of thinking and believing come to the surface. And we want you to accept that instead of saying that it is me thinking these thoughts, we want you to accept that it's a belief that is being activated. And that belief is filled with all sorts of narratives that you then see play out through the sort of theater of your mind. But the thought will play itself out, and that's when you shift. We call it a resolution as well, because you, at the same time, receive the resolution to those sort of churning thoughts. But we don't want you to think of it as a resolution in the sense that I have to resolve it.
Mhm. I've learned the allowing part where, if you just sort of accept, as you said, and kind of flow with it, go with it, that there is like an intelligence that comes through, a wisdom that comes through. And and that always feels really good. And I think that what I've noticed is that I can be in this space of awareness, this awareness of sort of the greater me, the energy, and then at the same time, kind of looking at my world, looking at my life, looking at myself, I suppose, and 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 bringing that kind of that source energy through what I'm perceiving. Um, and I know that feeling, and then that stuff that kind of comes up that's kind of irritating, feels almost, um, I almost, I'm going to say resent it, but it's not that I resent it. It's that um, I was, I was feeling so good, feeling so good, and then it's like, oh, that comes up, and then so I'm feeling like really like, oh, I'm in connection with this peace, this peaceful, beautiful feeling, and I'd really like an answer to this idea that I've had about my blood pressure. Why is my blood pressure not, in the range that I want it to be? Okay, so then I recognize that there's resistance in that whole idea. There's an idea of constriction and contraction with blood pressure. And I see myself getting, kind of wound up about it. But I'm bringing this also this beautiful perception of myself as, here's something that allows me to explore myself more deeply. What am I really asking here? What is it that I don't? So ideas will come up like, oh, I don't approve of myself in this respect, or I don't accept myself in this respect, or I think it's wrong, or, so I go through all of those kinds of things, those thoughts that come up along with it. And
And you're reactivating them now.
yeah, I am, because they're so like right here. So that's the thing. It's
And
like,
so that's you, that is you agreeing with that as we spoke. It is, here is the sort of observer, and here are the thought patterns, and they're running so concurrently, they're running so similarly that, of
yeah.
course, as most do, you don't see a differentiation between the two possible lines of thought. They are one. You're identifying with that line of thought, you're identifying with that narrative, and you're sort of explaining it.
Oh, wait a
And so
minute.
what, indeed. And so it takes a gentle sort of releasing through that process to allow that thought and that train of thought to play itself out without agreeing with it per se, without having it become yours, without identifying with that train of thought.
Okay, I understand what you're saying. Am I um, stepping back into that place of stillness and quiet, and kind of just um, Am I, because I guess the feeling and the perceiving is what's getting a little confusing. So I can feel that tension, and that sort of grabs me in a way, and then I can perceive that I'm feeling that tension. And
Indeed.
I know that that is a result of a pattern or belief, or something deeper. So the perception and the feeling, um, somehow um, aren't in sync because of the way that I'm kind of dealing with it, I think.
So it's a lot to sort of to think your way through, which is why we don't advise you to think your way through it. But
Yeah.
to sort of give you the zoomed out view of this, your perception is driving your emotion, and you can have an awareness of both of those.
Oh, oh,
And when
oh,
you step back into the place of awareness, then you're aware of your emotions, you're aware of the thoughts, the beliefs, and ideas that are generating the emotion, and you can allow it to find its gentle resolution.
that's right. No, that's really good. That's really, really good.
It is. And as you're moving through life, it is not then having the thoughts or the beliefs come up and then you're identifying with them and then how do I change this belief and so on and so forth. But instead, you're recognizing reactions, you're recognizing patterns, and you're not trying to affect change again by applying sort of physical laws, by going into the inner world and changing the thought and whatever. But it is that awareness of that overall process brings you back into your center.
That's right.
And if we're talking about it in energetic terms, you're no longer offering that vibration or that energy of that perception. Instead, you're offering the energy of your eternal self. You could call it the awareness. People call it the I am. Whatever you call it, you're in that state of being and you're holding that as the center. And then the other perceptions that you can have the awareness that you are perceiving come into resolution.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you're in the thought and you're trying to think your way out of the thought, you're only activating the thought more and more and more and becomes bigger and bigger and bigger, and the emotion becomes stronger and stronger and stronger, which is what many people do, and they are quite confused when they're not able to shift their energy. But when you step back into that eternal self and relax into that state of being, that's the attractive point. Then you have this belief and you can perceive it sort of out there, this
Mm,
sort of belief. The belief used to be right here, it used to
mm,
be driving the narrative going on,
mhm.
but you step back and the belief is sort of out there. You recognize it for what it is. The belief is just a collection of thought, and it's pulsing energy. It's pulsing what you then feel as emotion. It's pulsing all of this, but you recognize it as sort of its own entity, if you would, its own
Warm.
self-contained reality, indeed. And when you have that recognition, then the belief starts to soften, the emotion becomes less intense, and then you feel yourself sort of stepping off that ledge. The thoughts become softer, and then what used to be a collection of thought sort of out there relaxes, resolves, and then it flows to you, and then you have the inspiration. And that's where the resolution comes from. That's where the new idea comes from. That's where the solution, that's where the next step is revealed to you.
Yeah. So in my asking, I think that I was coming from a position of um, human, um, human with problem, rather than coming from the position of kind of, from what I'm hearing from you, is more of love, with the idea of open, recognizing that this form that I'm questioning is is a belief that I've created, and therefore um, it has a perspective that I can um, resolve. I mean, so it's hard to use these words sometimes.
And
But
that's all
yeah,
right. The words will come to you.
yeah. Yeah. Okay, well, they're coming, but I don't know, they're making any sense. So yeah. So again, I was having an expectation of what that would be, and that was my sort of human position, my human kind of perspective thinking this is what it is. And and I know what you're saying about this sort of awareness, just being the awareness of just being the awareness of and in that space there's incredible wisdom, strength, beauty, openness. Yeah, to- totally different feel, totally different, yeah, energy. Okay. Boy, it's a new kind of way of relating, isn't it? I
It
mean, not
is.
for you, but, but you know, but it's foundational. I can see it's totally foundational to really any kind of shift or creation,
It is.
you
And you
know?
have these realizations. In other words, what you just described, what you just spoke to us, is the resolution that we were wanting you to get to. But we aren't here anymore, at least, to sort of talk you into that. We want you to continue to get the feeling of that state. And that's what you just did. And it felt nice. It felt relaxed. It didn't feel like trying to figure it all out. And that's when you
Mhm.
have those, we call it a resolution. That's when you have the idea come fully into this moment.
Yeah.
And if you zoom out even further from that, it's a necessary understanding, what you could call a learning, what you could call a knowing, that happens as you go deeper and deeper into that connection with the inner energy. So, in other words, you could see it as a sort of layer. You're coming in and going deeper, and you hit a layer, and here is the learning, here is the new idea, here is the resolution, and you accomplish that, and you go deeper into another layer. Well, don't be surprised when all sorts of other stuff comes up, but it's just an opportunity to say to yourself, "Ah, this is something new to work on. This is something new to shift," and then you go deeper and deeper and deeper.
Yeah. Is it sort of, I've also noticed that there was a little tinge of sort of kind of not fear, but um kind of
Well,
like
you were saying that you had this expectation as to how things were supposed to
yeah,
be. And
yeah,
if you know that it's going in a different direction than what you have been expecting in
yeah,
those terms,
yeah,
there is that fear of the unknown,
yeah,
that
that's what it
apprehension, if you would.
apprehension. Yep.
And that's another feeling to just let it come up, feel
Mm-hmm.
it, accept it, and just let it continue to flow.
Mm-hmm. The thing that you've taught me that is really precious is this knowing of that peaceful state, of that deep peace and that energy. And it's so good that I have learned that because no matter what, there's always that. I guess that's the eternal me, but there's always that energy, and I can always connect with that energy. So while we're talking about this sort of, you know, experience that I've had, at the same time, I am totally connected to source energy all the time.
Indeed.
Yeah. I did want to ask you about the process of energy formlessness, kind of, and then form. And it seems that, you know, you talked about thoughts and beliefs almost as if they were a form. And while they may not be a solid, like, you know, knock on wood kind of form, they are a creation, right? They are like, and they come from that space of formlessness, from that.
Indeed. So, to give you the broader picture, there is a field, if you would, and the field is filled with unending possibility. which you would call thought. From those thoughts, you start to gather thought forms, which then gather in intensity. And when they reach a gathering of intensity, there is the physical realization. And so if you look out into the night sky, you can see that sort of physically reflected back to you. All of the possibilities condensing into physical forms. And so from that field, you will draw to you that which you are. And so that is why we want you to make it your priority to connect back to that inner energy, because then from all of the possible thoughts, all of the possibilities of belief and intent and all that, you'll draw to you that which complements your state of being, which means you'll have a little thought, and then it'll get a little bit bigger, and then it'll get a little bit bigger, and then it'll start to attract all of the other thoughts that are like it, and then it'll get stronger and more clear, and you'll start to have inspirations, and you'll start out with a vague visualization, in the sense that in the sort of in space you have the vague nebula that then condenses and condenses and condenses and condenses until there is combustion and
Star.
form, indeed.
Yeah.
And that is the same process that happens within the inner mind, within the inner world. So you just choose the state of being. It continues to focus and coalesce and gain more stability. And you experience that process again through what starts out like a vague feeling, becomes a little bit more present, becomes a little bit more defined within the inner mind, which gains more clarity. And really, what we want you to pay attention to throughout that process is the emotional state, because your emotions will continue to intensify as this thought pattern gains momentum.
Right. Right. Okay. Thank you for that explanation. That was beautiful and very clear. And so the thought from the field and me attracting that to me, am I attracting the original energy of who I am, the original divine spark that sort of I carry, whether that's, love or peace or
Ultimately, yes.
Mhm.
Ultimately, yes. But while in this sort of physical form, you have the ability to give your attention and your thought to all sorts of different things to diversify your state of being, which is
Right.
very, very valuable, because then if, when, and as you do make that connection back to the eternal self, you have all of this brand new raw material from which to create.
Yeah. 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 And that can be kind of, I can choose like um I can choose the negative, angry, mad
You
energy,
could.
or I could choose a lighthearted, uplifting, harmonious. Yeah.
Whatever state of being you choose is going to perpetuate itself into your physical experience. But if you are able to step back and recognize there is a choice,
Mhm.
we want your criteria for that choice to be, is it my inner energy? Is it my eternal knowing?
Mm.
And you feel that when it clicks into place, and you feel it when it clicks out of place. Now, there are all sorts of reasons, justifications as to why you would choose a different energy. Oh, I know that I'm right.
Mhm. Mhm.
I know that they're wrong,
Mhm.
and I know that they don't know that they're wrong.
Mhm. Mhm.
And we say, how does that feel?
Oh my gosh. Well, torturous.
Indeed. And so you'll continue to create more things to torture yourself over if you make your criteria for choice anything other than that resonance. Easier said than done. But if you continue to prioritize that, you'll always come back to that state of being.
Yeah. 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 I don't think it's too much work to stay in the other state of being,
Indeed.
all that resistance, too much work. Um, So, in our current global situation, I'm wondering about today is Earth Day, and I was wondering about the planet itself. And as an organism, as a energetic organism, as an energetic body, is it also attracting to itself, but through properties that are more like physics oriented? Or does it also attract emotionally?
So the planet itself does not attract emotionally in that sense, but your perception of those rhythms, of the energies within nature, you experience emotionally.
Yes. Okay.
But yes, at a fundamental level, there is all of that energy that is moving and ebbing and flowing and requesting and receiving and shifting and changing. And you're part of that. You're an extension. In other words, that inner energy flows through the consciousness of the earth. It flows through and up into that which you are. And it continues that expression and that exploration and that creation through that which you are. But again, you have the option to give your attention into all sorts of different ways, into all sorts of different, and you're all very creative in that sense. But you can have all of the above. You can be physical, conscious, creative, moving forward, expansive, interested, and also have harmony and balance with the planet from which you come. Your inner center that we keep telling you to find is the same energy that is present within all things. So there's nothing that's excluded with that. And you'll know that. You'll know it experientially when you continue and have known it, when you continue to practice this connection, but then you go out into nature and you feel the wind and you have that awareness of the physical world around you and feel yourself to be sort of in that flow as well because you are.
So the pause that we're globally doing here, um, a lot of people are saying, well, the air feels cleaner, the sky is bluer, the water's cleaner, Venice apparently doesn't smell, things like that. So it's having this kind of repercussion with the planet, or the planet's having a, influence on, I'm not sure which way it goes, um, but that energy is, it seems to also be reflecting through the earth, feeling, and this is a judgment maybe, but feeling cleaner, feeling less polluted, feeling more harmonious. Is
It
that
is.
okay? Okay. So it's our kind of energy also then, you know, is felt with the earth, or the earth energy, as the earth energy is felt with us.
Very much so.
Okay. Okay.
Very much so. And you can take that state of being and you can push it. In other words, you can identify materially, you can push that sort of belief system to the max. And that's what you have going on here is that sort of is pushed to the very maximum. And you're seeing the restraints, the restrictions within that materialistic view, if you would, in that sense, that there is not the acknowledgement of the inner energy, there is not the appreciation of the emotional validity, the validity of emotions. And that mindset is reaching its culmination with this. And it's a good thing. And so you see that balance being restored. You see that coming together, the relaxation, the restoration. Of course, the earth has had that inherent ability and has been doing it to a much greater extent than many of you even accept, but it is allowed to sort of clean itself up.
Yeah. Yeah. So the earth doesn't like cause earthquakes, like as a
A punishment?
punishment. No.
It does not.
No.
It is always seeking and finding balance. And
Balance.
when you don't see yourself as being separate or divorced from nature, then you allow that same intuition and that same instinct and that same awareness to play through you. So, in the same way the animals have the awareness far beforehand that something like that may occur and adapt their behavior to it, that you have that inherent ability as well. But if you're completely focused on the feed on your phone and not aware of the expression that is going on from within, then you see how it's so easy to distract yourself. And that is what you've kept feeling come up as well, is just a distraction from that awareness.
I appreciate you saying that because my desire, I mean, my clear desire, very clear desire, is to allow more and more and more of the sort of energy. And it feels like I, more and more trust, more love, more connection with the energy to be sort of my like lead the way. I don't know how else to describe that, sort of like, oh, well, today is a beautiful day. I went outside, put my face in the sun. It felt so good, but it also felt like I was in connection with divine source at that time, in that moment. And it's such a beautiful feeling that I know it is the distractions that just keep me from feeling that more and more and more.
And I
And
want to back it up a little bit for you as well, because when you step out into the world and you're feeling that rapturous experience and the
yeah,
bliss that comes from that clear connection,
yeah,
well, we want you to pay attention to a few steps behind. In other words, what led to what impulse did you feel that led to the impulse that led to the impulse that led to you to then step out into that glorious experience? Because we want you to just appreciate that it starts out very subtle, but when you let that energy, that inner energy play itself out, it will eventually culminate as these wonderful experiences. And even that wonderful experience can be seen as a sort of stepping stone on the way to even greater experiences as you continue to appreciate that unfolding. But many times you see where you are and you forget about all of the little things that have led up to that moment. And so everything that's coming before you, everything that is coming in front of you, if you would, so everything that is in your perceived future experience maybe seems a little hard to get to. It seems a little out of reach, but it's just a series of steps.
that's really good, Joseph. I don't think I had paid attention to those little, but now that I think back and I reflect on how I saw the sunshine hitting the deck and how it felt like bright and warm, and it made me happy. And then I decided to go outside. So, I mean, that was one piece of it. I got up because I wanted to, kind of stretch my legs. But when I was walking and I saw that beautiful, I was kind of captured by this feeling of lightness and, oh, it's a beautiful day. And, it was kind of like a whole different rhythm that I got into there for, and then I stepped outside. So that's very good. That's
It
really good.
is.
Yeah. That was really good to help me be aware of that because I didn't appreciate the steps that led up to me doing that.
Mhm.
And that's part
And
of
so appreciating the steps that lead to your appreciation then compounds that appreciation and it
yeah,
becomes even stronger.
yeah, it does. There's so much that I'm not aware of that I could be more aware of, but it's exciting to become more aware. So
Indeed.
so I'm that's really a wonderful reminder. Thank you. um, I was just wondering what you see like in the next few months for us as humanity. In this time, like people seem to be thinking now about coming back together and opening up shops and um, will the energy be different? I mean, it has to be, right? The there's been so many like really empathetic and kind acts that I've seen, and people have done so many powerful, really caring things for each other in the midst of all of this. I hope that we continue that. So,
It will be so on the sort of other side, but we want you to also just to accept that this is going to go on for a little bit longer. It is not nearing its immediate end.
oh, okay.
So there is still plenty of time and space for those transformations to occur.
Okay, that's good. That's good. I was really actually hoping that because I don't want us to forget, like, I mean, I won't forget, but um, I don't know. Like just talking the, about things with people and how they're really affected, and how we need to care about each other, and support one another. Like these people down the street, they got chickens, and they had these little chicks, and I was out walking the dog, and we were talking, from the street, and she said, "Oh, I'll have eggs in about 5 months. Would you like me to bring you some eggs?" I was like, "Eggs from your chickens? Yeah, that'd be awesome." And then she was like, "Yeah, and I've got all these plants that I'm going to plant. Like, I'll have these vegetables. I can bring you some vegetables." I was like, "This is fabulous." I mean, I live in an urban area, and people are going to, exchange food. It's just really, just like warmed my heart. Felt
Indeed.
really, yeah, really friendly.
Indeed. And getting back to your point, that is sort of the natural way of things.
Yeah,
Indeed.
yeah. So, okay, well, um, yeah, I think we covered it for tonight. Thank you so much.
Very much so. You'll enjoy how this all comes together, and you'll see as you continue to relax into those meditative states how they're just thoughts. They're just ideas. They're just as real as any others, and they come and they go. They come from the field, they return to the field, and you have that stable center that allows you to differentiate, to choose, to have that awareness of the subtleties of energy within all of that. So when you let that just a little spark in, just that little bit of appreciating the sunlight on the deck and the warmth, you see how it leads to greater and greater and greater things, always having that awareness being the foundation and the center point there.
Yeah, thank you, Joseph. Thank you
Very
so
much so.
much.
Indeed.
Mhm.
We are complete.
There.
Hey. Hi, hi,
Oh, they
hi.
cleared that up for me. Thank you.